Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we love geeky wisdom. If you're new to the channel, my name's Brian, and today I wanted to talk to you about a new-to-me role-playing game, Blades in the Dark. It's a tabletop role-playing game that's all about criminals and scoundrels seeking their fortunes in a fantasy industrial type city. Full disclaimer, I haven't actually had a chance to play it yet, so this is just my initial impression reading through all the rules, and I've read through a lot of role-playing games, so I can give you at least my fair assessment of what it looks like from the onset. Imagine Ocean's 11 with heists and fast-paced action and people with their own specific roles in the crew and all of that, but as a fantasy tabletop role-playing game. And for me, what sets Blades in the Dark apart from other role-playing games is the way the mechanics are really tailored towards that concept of players working together to execute a plan. Now, the system of Blades in the Dark consists of the conversation, judgment calls, and rolling the dice. The conversation refers to the back and forth between the players and the game master during the game, where the GM represents all the challenges and the obstacles, and the players have to use their skills and abilities to overcome them. Nothing groundbreaking, that is pretty common with most role-playing games. One way this sets itself apart from other games like D&D is that there's no one person in charge of the story. It emerges from the unpredictable and the collision of the situation and the character's actions and mechanics and the consequences, and you might think, well, that happens in D&D as well, and it does to a large extent. But the judgment calls are made by both the GM and the players, with everyone kind of contributing to what the final say is. And sometimes the GM has that final call, and sometimes the players have the final call. Let me give you an example. Players have the final say in deciding which action is the best solution, and the GMs have the final say in determining the danger and the effectiveness of a particular action. And the action dice of the game resolve the challenges and determine the outcomes. So make sure you've picked up a bunch of d6s if you don't already have them. That's what the game mechanic kind of bases itself on. And the number of dice that you roll is dependent on the situation and various factors, but if the highest roll is a 6, it's a full success. If it's a 4 or 5, it's a partial success, but if you roll a 1, 2, or 3, it's a failure. And in general, there are 4 types of rolls in the game. Action rolls are when a character takes on a dangerous or a tricky task to determine what happens, what's the outcome there. And downtime rolls are used to see how much characters can accomplish in between heists. This is something I really think is unique to the game. Fortune rolls are used when the GM wants to determine the random outcomes rather than just deciding how things are put in place. So for example, if the GM wants to determine how the loyalty to a specific person is destroyed when the group pulls off a certain heist and, contradicts that friendship, then they can do so randomly with a roll, or they can just kind of decide on the fly using what they think fits the story best. And finally, there are resistance rolls, and you use these types of rolls to reduce the severity of a consequence to see if the stress that you suffered may be a little bit less, or the damage that you took is a little bit less. If you've watched heist movies before, you have seen them kind of look at the clock with the pressure, can we pull it off? Well, the game makes that into a mechanic as well. There are progress clocks. These clocks are used to track the progression of a heist or some other time-sensitive activity, and each clock has a number of segments that are filled in with events or tasks. And this creates structure and urgency, and it makes the players sort of make choices quickly and take actions to move the clock forward. The outcome of the events and the task can cause the clock to advance more quickly or to slow down, adding tension to the game depending on the way things are playing out. And the character creation process is fantastic. It really helps you dig into the role of the character that you're creating. You start by choosing a playbook. And this is sort of the reputation of the character that they have in the underworld. And you choose from 7 different options. There's Cutter, Hound, Leech, Lurk, Slide, Spider, or Whisper. Those just sound cool. And they sound like criminal underworld sort of, reputations, right? And that's what it should evoke as you're making your character. Then you choose a heritage and a background, and you allocate action dots to kind of determine your character's strengths and weaknesses, and you choose a special ability and a close friend or rival. This, by the way, reminds me of the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, the heroic chronicle that's there. I use a modified version for my home game in 5e, where you pick rivals and you see what they might be, and you pick other friends that you might have. I think this is a really good mechanic to build into character creation overall, and they do a really good job of it here. What to me is interesting is if you all create characters at the table together, you may be able to mix and match friends and rivals with other people. Maybe your friend is someone else's rival, and so on. So it could get really interesting even in the character creation process. Finally, you have to pick a vice, such as gambling or some luxury. Then you record your character's name and alias and their appearance. And then there's a crew mechanic in Blades of the Dark, and this is really, to me, the highlight. It's where the players work together as a team of thieves, sharing their resources and their skills to support one another to accomplish their task. And this concept really gets at the heart of what most group role-playing games are supposed to be anyway, having teamwork and making great choices for groups, even if you're talking about criminals. As I was reading through this, one of the things that kept popping into my mind was a fantasy book series that I'm a fan of. I started reading last year, and that's The Lies of Locke Lamora. Now, this series by Scott Lynch is listed, actually, I was happy to see this, as one of the media touchstones. And these touchstones are really a way to help guide your players into the mindset, is to give them an idea. When you play something like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, there is already a decent amount of fantasy lore around those tropes. For this game, though, it's built on a heist, so you have to have some type of touchstone to let people understand this is the type of game this is. And The Lies of Locke Lamora is a really great one. It's got the same type of intrigue, and it's about criminals and criminal organizations and pulling off heist, and it's just a great book series, so check it out. But I also think this is just a great way of getting ideas for running a heist-style role-playing game, even if you're playing a different system. So it's no secret that I'm a fan of 5e, and it's always been tricky to run heists successfully. And I know that Wizards of the Coast is about to release Keys from the Golden Vault, which is an anthology of 13 heist one-shot adventures, and that's great. Anthologies can be really good resources to drop content right into your campaign, so it's up to you if you want to go that route. But just reading through this game, just kind of looking through the rules, and not even playing it yet, I already have a bunch of ideas that I could adapt and put into my existing campaign. But what do you think? Have you played Blades in the Dark? Or maybe you have also found that it's a good inspiration for how to adapt your game of Pathfinder or 5e or whatever other role-playing game that you have. I think that there's a lot that can be shared in this community, so please make sure you comment below with some suggestions. Okay, thanks for sticking with me and hearing my initial take on Blades in the Dark. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. It really does make a difference to the channel, so we appreciate it. And since the game got me thinking about it, I'll leave you with a little bit of geek philosophy from The Lies of Locke Lamora. The more in control the Mark thinks they are, the more easily they respond to real control. Cheers.